Tell me about your cars here now that you have right here.
Well, the one I'm sitting on is a 1944 Ford GPW, otherwise known as the WILLYS Jeep. The one to the right is a 1934 CHEVY 1.5 ton light truck, which would be equivalent to the present day equivalent would be the 1500.
Where did you get these vehicles from?
Well,
What's the history behind them?
with the Jeep, this was from a childhood dream of owning a Jeep, but I never found any in Jamaica like this. I thought that all gone, or they were never here. It wasn't until another car enthusiast told me about the Jeep, or what he saw. This was in 2013. So I went with him and saw the Jeep. It was on a gantry, and a tree had grown up through it. But I realized it was late, at the most, late 40s, without having any research into it. And I thought, well, I'll have this, if they were selling. After acquiring it, I checked the serial number and realized it was a 44. This was not a CJ. This was a Ford GPW manufactured in December 1944. And it was in a deplorable state. I'll show you the pictures after. But the reason behind the madness is Jamaica was involved indirectly in World War II. We had a large military presence between the Brits and the Americans here. And of course, at that time, Jamaica was a British colony. So this has significant importance to Jamaica in so much as the war effort. I haven't been able to trace what unit it belonged to, but it was probably a Lend-Lease vehicle that came here. And I think it's the only surviving World War II vehicle, military vehicle, still around.
What was the procedure now for restoring it? How did you get it? How did you remove it from the tree?
Well, they used a forklift truck to get it down, and then we put it on a lowboy trailer and brought it here. So the first thing was to get the serial number and assess what year, or approximately what year it was, and then try to unseize the engine, which was to no avail. But eventually I had to pull every single thing apart. It was not in a running condition. So everything was taken apart, sandblasted, then assessed whether it could be be repaired or had to be replaced. And that was a 6-year project. It's not the original engine. The original engine, which was matching serial numbers with the chassis, the block split and you couldn't get it repaired here. So I found this engine came from a 57 WILLYS. The main difference being, instead of timing chain, it used 2 timing gears. It looks just the same as the 44 model. Having converted from 6 volt to 12, here I had quite a large voltage regulator which I took out. And this is an electronic voltage regulator. And basically it looks the same. It's just this, it does somewhat detract from the originality of the vehicle. But I did this for fun, to drive.
So this is the horn over here.
That's something, yeah.
Alright. And then you have the ground strap on. I noticed that you have a little oil can here.
Yeah.
What's that for?
You need all things up.
Okay, okay. And you sprayed the block
Yeah.
and the radiator.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you get this radiator from now? Where is this?
Came with it.
This is actually of 19.
I would suspect this will be a post-war radiator, but it was in the vehicle, so I kept it. Whatever I found on the vehicle, I kept.
Does it have coolant in there or is it just straight water?
Cooler.
Okay. But it doesn't really need coolant.
I prefer to run coolant in it.
Okay. But back in the day they didn't have coolant.
No, they would have probably had water.
Okay. And what about the carburetor now?
This is a Solex carburetor. Original ones were Carter, or I forget the other brand, but this is the one I found to fit the intake manifold.
Okay. I noticed that the head now, the spark plugs are on top. They're not at the side like some vehicles.
All right. The thing is, the head on the houses, the spark plugs, the valves are on here.
Right.
So it's valve in the block.
Mm-hmm.
The new ones, newer Jeeps, which had Hurricane engine, had a larger cylinder head with valves in the block and then overhead cams. So they were high engines. So the 50s vehicle, the bonnet was actually tall to accommodate the larger engine.
So where you get gaskets from and all of that now?
You buy it overseas.
How did you manage to keep all the parts together and set it back up? What's the process in doing all of that now?
Well, you can split the vehicle into sections, so to speak. There's engine and drivetrain, then there's the body and the chassis. So you pick, once it's disassembled, you put it right in the garage on the floor, laid out, and you pick one item. Half the problem is to find storage space for all the things you pulled out. But you pick one item. So what I did was I left the engine till the last and then started on the chassis and worked from there up, from chassis, drivetrain, body, engine.
And I can imagine now, being an old vehicle, stuff got broken and all of that. How did you deal with all of that?
Oh, there were lots of things that were, in some cases, beyond economical repair. It just couldn't be. For instance, the body, what's called the tub, when we sandblasted the tub and the rest of the body panels, the tub was too far gone. Every fabricator I went to said they wouldn't touch it. It wouldn't have been safe. And the idea, part of the idea behind all of this is making a safe vehicle to drive, not for show. So I had to replace the tub. And lots of other components. I had to totally rebuild the engine. More or less rebuild the entire vehicle. You change nuts and bolts that were really too far gone to be safe. And the main thing is everything had to be done so the vehicle would be safe to drive.
So you got parts from overseas. Where did you source them from?
They're in Europe and US. There are quite a few suppliers. US being the main source. So I was able to go on the internet and call them in most cases. Spoke to them. We got catalogs on the internet. So able to discuss parts that were going to be needed, and it was ordered that way.
Okay, so you sourced some of the parts, and then the rest you got from out here.
Some things I got here. I found wheel bearings, cross arm bearings, seals, and the trick of it is you don't tell them what it's for. If I took the part in, I said I need this bearing, and of course they would ask what year, what vehicle. So I just say a Jeep, and then because if you told them the year, automatically you'd hear we don't have it. But if you think about it, bearings haven't changed. Even with the multitude of manufacturers, a bearing is a bearing is a bearing. So I was able to show cross-arm bearings, wheel bearings, seals, without telling them specifically what year it was. And that helped speed up the process to a point, and of course reduce the cost of buying stuff overseas. But the bulk of the things, of the components, all came from US. The original vehicle was 6 volt. Now to make it compatible, or more compatible with today, it was changed to 12 volt. You do lose originality in some respects, and by putting on non-genuine parts from the 40s. But then I'm not restoring it as a completely restored World War II vehicle with original parts. I'm restored it as, in the States they would say, for reenactment and to have fun with it. Because if you buy original stock, it can be quite pricey.
You had to replace like bulbs and alternator.
The whole wiring loom, I changed from a generator to an alternator. And a number of things which were present day equipment. For instance, if I was buying a water pump, the water pump was made after the war, post-war water pump, but it works. Rather than try to hunt for the original parts, which can be quite pricey. But the idea is for me to drive this thing almost like a daily drive. I had fun with it.
Is there any other Jeep that has a similar engine like this, or is there?
Yes. A friend of mine has a 1957 WILLYS. His own is a more modern one. So instead of a flathead or a valve in the block, his own has a valve in the head. And that's the closest one there is to my Jeep. But I have not seen any others like this in Jamaica.
JDF had some of these Jeeps, right?
They had, the one my friend has is an ex-JDF vehicle. And that they acquired, that was sold in the 60s when he picked it up. They did, however, have the modern version of the WILLYS, which I believe it's a M151, which was used in Vietnam. And those were extensively used for a while to replace the Land Rovers.
So you have been to a lot of car shows and all of that. What is the response from people on seeing this?
I can't believe it. It does draw a crowd. And I will admit, well, as you can see, I never painted it a nice shiny green. I put it back in the matte green. And it does look like a little bit rough, but I didn't want it looking pristine, like a showroom model. I wanted to look like a working vehicle from the era. But it does draw a crowd. Of course, the stories behind it, being found in the tree, is many people are intrigued.
What are some of the experiences with it? I mean, I know that it must have, have stories on its own, going all over the place.
Well, so far I've been to Irish Town, to Mandeville a couple of times. I mainly try and stay on flat ground if possible, because it is 80 years old this year. And you have to bear in mind, as an older vehicle, it could give problems somewhere. So you don't want to end up in a situation where you're far from home with little or no resources to recover it, to bring it back. So I try and limit where I go with it. And it's not the most comfortable vehicle to drive. It's fine. Compared to the Chev, it rides very well, but still quite rough.
So what is the most exciting experience you have had with it when you have been on the road?
Nothing tremendous. I mean, I've had people follow me and take pictures or stop me and ask about it. And time permitting, I will tell them. But it usually is an attraction because it is a 1944 vehicle. And there are very few of those or anything of that vintage around here, especially in Kingston.
So has it broken down with you?
Oh yes. As Jay Leno said, you have to expect that with older vehicles. They will break down. So if his can break down, I don't feel too bad about mine.
So what was one of the most memorable breakdowns?
The fuel pump packed up. And I had to tow it back in from the Palace Sailors Airport. Otherwise, knock wood, so far, so good.
Okay, good. What's the story with the Chev now?
The Chev was donated to the museum in camp in 1975. They had a small museum at the 3rd Battalion Jamaica Regiment, very small. It was in this condition or this color. It was a very light blue color with no back on the back of it. It sat outside neglected in the elements. And so from 1978, I go across to 3 Jar once a month and speak to the officer commanding. I was in the army then, and request the vehicle if they would sell me or let me try and fix it up. In which I was given a resounding no every time. But I persisted, and eventually going through various OCs, officer commanding, and eventually in 1990, just before the changeover of the officer commanding, I wore down the incumbent officer commanding, and when I walked into his office, he threw his pen down and in abject frustration told me in no uncertain terms to take the blankety blank vehicle and leave. So after that, I promptly got my gate pass and a tow truck. I took it home. But from 78 to 90, determined. And that was the first vehicle I worked on extensively. Then I realized what I'd bitten off. And sometimes the saying goes, be careful what you wish for, it may just get it. Well, I got it. The unique thing about this vehicle, bar its age, is the entire cab is metal, nailed or bolted on to a wood frame. And the wood frame had long since rotted away, and there were just pieces of it. And there wasn't much on the internet about it. So the hardest part was redoing the wood by literally shaping, for instance, a door jamb. And you really wanted a shipwright or a wheelwright, neither of which existed. So I got a man who was allegedly a good carpenter, and he'd worked on the old buses, which I wouldn't frame, the old Macaulay buses. So we took a door jamb, we'd fashioned it out of wood, and that would take quite a while. You had to bend it, to curve it, by steaming or boiling it, and build a jig to try and curve the wood. And that would take quite a while. So you do one piece, fit it, and realize it was slightly out. So then you start all over again. And between working on that project off and on, it took 12 years.
What kind of wood you use to restore it?
Mahogany in some cases, although the original structure is oak. And some cases maho for the floor. It's a wooden floor. You had to find wood which was workable. Ideally, for longevity, bullet wood might have been great, but then it would destroy your tools trying to cut it. So mainly mahogany, treated mahogany. And yes, treated mahogany.
What about the metal parts now?
The metal was fairly intact. There were certain parts missing, which I had to refabricate. I have one section of it, so it would make a mirror image of it for the other side. But basically everything you see there is what it came with, although not in that condition. The seats were missing, so I rebuilt basic seats in it, which a bench seat, which is not the most comfortable thing in the world. And I'm trying to locate, as we speak, the spring frames where the original seats are close to, which I can adapt to this seat to make it more comfortable. It's got spring blades all around. There's no power steering. It's got mechanical brakes and you have to double clutch. So it's quite a workout driving it.
What kind of engine does it have in?
Originally it had a 228 inline 6, but unfortunately the mechanic I gave it to, because I was working overseas at the time, stripped the engine down and left it outside in the elements, so it was ruined. But eventually I found a 1957 Chevy Bel Air straight 6 235, which I've put in there now. So things are not easily located here. And of course, had I been in the States, I would have more access to people who know about these vehicles.
So I don't see the brake servo, reservoir.
There is none.
How it work then?
Mechanical brakes.
Oh,
Push rod.
okay, right. The Jeep is also mechanical.
No, that's hydraulically assisted, yeah. That has a reservoir and a master cylinders. This
Okay.
doesn't.
I notice it doesn't have any wipers.
The wiper motor was a vacuum one, which was quite small, the size of roughly the size of a cigarette packet. That was solo of the vehicle. So I'm still trying to find a small electric wiper motor to put back on it, which would have to have a protruding shaft of no more than 1.5 inches because the windshield folds out. And they sold a horn, which was an onion dome with about that long of a trumpet looking horn.
So which one was harder to restore, the Jeep or the Chevy?
That one. The Chevy, because of the woodwork.
Okay. And there's nothing like that in Jamaica.
Not that I've seen.
Interesting. What about the power, the batteries and
The
generators?
battery is standard.
Was that 12?
That's also converted to 12 volt.
Okay. It was 6 volts.
It was 6 originally, yeah.
About the windows now.
Well, this one did not come with windows or a winding mechanism when I got it. Apparently, windows were an option, so that the wood had the hole bored in there, and on the doors it's a metal cover covering wood. So what I found were part of studs, the remains of studs around. So I put it back in this configuration using canvas and clear spray.
You drive this one to shows.
Yes. Otherwise, it is a handful in terms of riding, very rigid. And I've driven it on a Sunday with less traffic because it's mainly because of the mechanical brakes. I haven't changed those. I mean, I've redone the shoes, but you don't want to be in close quarter traffic with that. It doesn't stop as easily as you would like. So you have to anticipate way ahead, and the less traffic you have, the better.
What was the most exciting thing that has happened with you with this Jeep, with the Chevy now?
No, breakdown. Yes, that's normal with it. I've had a carb rotation with it once. But otherwise than that, no. And that one does attract a crowd. I've had people follow me home filming the vehicle.
Okay, talking about filming now, have you used either vehicle in any of the films? You want to tell us about some of the films that you have had there?
Well, the Chev, prior to it being resprayed, and there was no wooden back on the chassis, so it was just a basic cab, and that was very rusty looking. It was in the movie Small Island, and it's been in the backdrop for another movie in Portland only 2 years ago. I forget the name of that one. The Jeep was recently in the Bob Marley movie, even though I explained to the set people, you have to edit out the stars on the side. I haven't seen the movie, so I have no idea if it made it on screen or is it on the cutting room floor.
So those are the only movies that you have had?
With these vehicles in there, yeah.
Yeah. What about commercials and
Well,
stuff like that?
the Chev has been in a music video. It's been in commercial as a backdrop.
The back of the Chev now is wooden. Where did you get that from?
They built it.
Okay. What? Tell me about that, the building of that now.
I had the gentleman who built it here in one day.
One day.
One day.
With all the riveting and all of that on it.
Well, yeah.
So what? He just came and he brought his.
We fashioned out on paper what I envisaged it would look like, and he said he gave me a list to buy the lumber and the bits and pieces, and he did it here in one day. Granted, it wasn't finished with raw wood, so then the stain and stuff was put on after, but it was done in a day.
And mounting it and all of that.
Yeah.
You have any problem when you go to the depot to get it passed?
No. The Chev normally empties the office of the depot. They'll come out to take pictures, and then some brave soul will step up to drive it.
Okay, great. All right, Paul, thank you so much.